All right, gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Go to Market Crossroads. I think this is episode 4. So we've made it 4 episodes. Like, look at us, guys. This is like a thing now. So we can all be proud of what we are building together. And I think one of the fun. Well, actually, before I kind of go into that, Zach Harris, how y'all doing?
Good. I mean, we've probably made it into like the 99th percentile of already. I'm sure like 1.1 episodes is the average. So let's kudos to us.
Elite company.
Yeah. But
Harris,
For
how are
sorry.
you,
sure.
man?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
it's all good. Hopefully, we're cracking into some people's commutes or grocery store routines or whatever. And if nothing else, if it's just between the three of us and the lamps, it's I've been really enjoying talking to you guys.
Yeah, I don't know if we've eclipsed like 10 views yet, but that's okay, guys. I enjoy that it gives me an excuse to hang out with you all. So
Yeah, yeah.
that's
Rome wasn't built in a day.
well, I like one of the things that we did in the last few episodes, which is just kind of what's been going on the last week that you want to highlight. It could be something from the show, feedback you received from your mother, or it could be something that you're seeing in the market as you're kind of building your company. So, Harris, I'll start with you in terms of what's been going on or something you want to highlight.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that we do that's a little different versus like a lot of software companies is that we do have Slack channels. I know some do this, but a lot don't. We do have Slack channels with our users, and then particularly for our agencies, because with our agencies, they'll have like 10 or 20 clients that they're using our product across. And I was thinking a lot about our conversation last week around intent signals, intent data providers, things like that. And I started asking a couple of our agency partners about this and like seeing kind of where they're using it and how it's coming up in some of their campaigns. And I think I got to eat a little crow. I mean, I tried to be somewhat neutral, but last week I was skeptical of intent data, and I think I was probably, I don't even know which type of logical fallacy or whatever type of error this was, but I think I was like misattributing. I think like historically, when I've thought about intent data, I've thought about like a handful of very specific providers that do a very specific thing. But I think that really what has changed over the last, I don't know, 6 months is that like this, I think thinking about it more as like signals and signal tracking, and that yes, sometimes there's intent, like individualized or personalized intent behind signals, but sometimes there's like firmographic or some other industry level information. But basically it's like the like drumbeat of things that are happening over time, and like as that cadence changes, like hey, there's a new sound, there's a new something. So I think like there's more happening there than I think we gave credit to, that I gave credit to last week. And I think like social signals, job changes, like these things have been kind of like one-offs, but I think they're becoming more structurally baked into how companies are doing all bound. And so I think like with that in mind, I think there's probably a lot more here, and frankly like a lot of learning for me about like what are like the current state of the art. Because like I said last week, like we're small, we have a small go to market budget, we're a 3-person team, and most of the time I'm spending my time focused on like uptime and like looking at logs. And so like our actual business, we are probably not the most innovative go to market team ourselves. So yeah, so that's just kind of what I've been kind of like reflecting on and thinking like, okay, I've got some catching up to do here, which is a good thing. We're always learning. But yeah, those are my reflections.
Well, I think it's
maybe
go ahead,
go
Zach.
for it.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna maybe build on that a little. I had some of, I think our mutual friends, Alex and Ali from
Oh yeah.
Underscore. They were out my way in San Francisco, so got to have a in-person powwow, pound the table, get all animated over some beers, all in good fun. But like we were talking about this as well, and they were really highlighting, um, to your point, Harris, like about the signals, and you can do a lot of different things, and just like the success they've had with like LinkedIn retargeting, right? And like
Hmm.
really elegant way to kind of take in a stream of people that are coming to your front door, and kind of like we were talking about last time of just like,
Hmm.
it is it intent? I don't know. Like, who knows why they landed there? It's hard to say you're a hand raiser, but then there are these other things you can do with that signal and get that into different channels. And I think they were just no surprise, like calling out the success they've had with that, and it makes intuitive sense. Like we all know that experience we have on you search for something on Google, then you pop open Instagram and you see the ad, and you're like, yeah, well, they did a good job there. I was thinking about that, you know. So it's like it does feel intuitive, and yeah, there's lots of opportunity there. So I was thinking about that, yeah, over the last few days as well.
Yeah, the Understory guys are great. Another Atlanta-based shop where I'm
Yeah,
at. So maybe Zach, you can kill two birds with one stone and get your butt on a
I
flight
know
and get over here, man.
they were
Harris,
saying.
you're welcome to as well. But
It's been
yeah,
a
I think
while.
that.
The last time I was in Atlanta was a long time ago, but it was a great trip.
Well, guys, that actually is a great opportunity for me to share some news in the last week. We're actually going to be holding an event in Atlanta. So if you're a revenue
Oh,
leader, and I promise I didn't set that up, but it actually worked out really well. So I'm just going to use it. So uh, we are going to be hosting Southbound, which is our annual revenue event in Atlanta. It'll be May. Gosh, this is the first time I've announced it, so I'm gonna get the dates wrong. But it's Wednesday and Thursday, which I believe is May 20th and 21st. You may have the opportunity to see Zach and Harris. I haven't talked to them about this, but I would love for them to be there. You'll probably see the Understory guys and a bunch of other cool people in the ecosystem. But we're excited. We just locked in the dates today and getting the vendors and the speakers all done. But heads up, that's coming in May. So we're excited about that. I guess the only other learning that I call out from this past week. This is a nice fail forward moment. I think Harris, you're the one that said eating crow. I thought this was kind of ironic because we talked about email deliverability a few weeks ago, and we have an SDR, and we experienced the problem of email deliverability. So his domain got crushed, and in fact, his email got shut down. So I thought that was a fun moment to call out to the team that even though we're supposedly subject matter experts, even we fail. So I just thought I'd share that as we're in a safe place. You know, this is therapy in some ways. But guys, I think as we kind of move on into the topics for today, or the topic rather, this is our fourth week as we talked about, and so kind of like building on the sequence. We talked about deliverability, we talked about the copy, we talked about intent, and I think it'd be kind of the segue even from what you, Zach, and Harris were talking about. Just gets in beyond intent. What are ways that you've seen be successful for us to look at the database in a way which drives that conversion from with these prospects? And so that's kind of what I want us to focus on today. And it could just be even, Zach, what you just said, like, hey, here's some of the things I'm learning as a result of talking to people, or things that you're seeing even within your own environment that have driven success. So that's what we're going to park on for the rest of the time. But who would like to get started?
um, I got a thought. Maybe we can run with something, see where it takes us. But I guess I think, when we're talking about like data and all this and list building and segmenting your market, and I think like a big transition that's happening and definitely enabled by AI is I think it kind of used to be you would like define your market kind of like outside in, right? Like you would be buying data, and like Zoom Info or LinkedIn Sales Now or whoever, like they define the schema, they define the world through filters and ranges and like all these things. And I think that just became the de facto way of companies would go like, all right, this is the data set, so I have to define my market via this available data. And I think things have changed a lot now where you're able to go kind of more inside out of, okay, that data is important. The firmographics, the technographics, those are all nodes in the universe, but also like, what the hell do we care about? And, like the classic example of like a Vanta or a Drata or like their go-to-market motion is like, hey, like, what's the most important thing? Like, I want to go to your website and see, do you list a SOC 2 certification or not, right? Like data points like that, those become like more valuable than any like industry or employer range or anything else, right? And so I think there's like this ongoing revolution of like, how do you define these other pieces of data that make sense to like your unique business, your products, your services, your motions, and like really make that a part of list building and segmentation and qualification, all these points. And I think there's just like, we're at the like early innings of like, how do we define our own data? And then via AI tools, we can get you can scrape and extract and find and summarize, and like you can get so much more from the universe now than you were just kind of forced to just buy off the truck as is in a a flat file or a GUI. Who cared? It was all the same for everybody. Now you can kind of define your own universe. So it's just like that. That's something I've been thinking a lot of, kind of this like outside in versus inside out. How do you define yourself? And I think that like unlocks a lot of possibilities. I don't know if that resonates or sparks any ideas, or is just too esoteric.
I was going to give Harris the floor. I can speak into it, Harris, if you'd like.
I'm just processing. I'm thinking. I'm still thinking about what we were talking about before we started recording too. You're giving me a lot today, Zach.
All right.
Well,
Well,
it isn't like whether you call it inside out or outside in or inside out. That I think there's this element of like democratization of data. I guess I don't know how else to say it. It's like the data is no longer exclusive to a handful of providers. Like the
Right.
data is at your fingertips. And so how do you actually weaponize that where those that know how to do it well will win? And we have this in like the first episode, I think, is like you can have such a competitive advantage if you know how to set things up well. And so I think that part to what you just described, Zach, it makes a ton of sense. This isn't exclusive to a few. Everyone has access to it now. And so what do you do about that? And it gets pretty exciting about how you can set things up.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that, like so much of the problem before it's like, okay, I'm a data provider and like I need to put this data into a database. So like I need like tables and columns and I need to organize it. And it's just like, that's like a fundamentally, like it's like a limiting thing. But it's like, how else were they going to do it? There was no other way for them to do it. And I think with the inside out approach, I think the bigger challenge is, I think like a lot of organizations aren't ready to do that. I mean, they don't really understand fully like who they sell to or like what it is that they're trying to do. I mean, sometimes it's like pretty shocking how big companies can get just because like they had the right idea at the right time. And it doesn't mean it's a bad company or it's an immature company. I mean, I have a ton of respect for anybody that can come up with an idea and make a buck, as long as it's not, something bad. But it's like, but that in and of itself doesn't necessarily make a company like good at this like idea of like what we're calling like go to market now, like GTM now. And it's like if you're going inside out, like you have to like go within, and then you really have to understand like who is it that you're selling to, what are their priorities, and then you have to have a way of like maintaining that as it changes over time. So it's like your company evolves over months and over years, and your customer base changes and what they're buying and your features, like all of those things change over time. And I think that the idea of like just buying this off the shelf stuff, it made it easy. I think that the maintenance aspect of this and what we're talking about is much harder than people kind of give credit for. And I think it puts like way more pressure on the CRM than has historically been expected in terms of like data hygiene and data governance. And, we have a user who they have a very serious Salesforce admin. And so we have this really good back and forth with her, and we're asking like, okay, how do you want it to be? And what can we add to our product to like solve this problem better? And what has stood out to me is how unusual she is relative to maybe some of the other admins that we've interacted with at other companies, where she's asking these questions. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like how, like this isn't even a problem with our product necessarily. It's not something we're doing right or wrong. She's just asking like depth of questions. And I'm like, nobody's asked me that in 2 years. And so, it's like, oh, and this is like, and anyway, so yeah, I think like the inside out, like what that puts pressure, I think, on teams that they're not like fully equipped to like handle. I don't know if they have like the right personnel or the right process around like how they manage their systems to do that work in ways that I think are unexpected. It's not just like go sign up for Clay or something, it requires like a discipline that I just like is not typical from what I've seen working with teams. I don't know if you guys agree with that or not.
I think actually what would be helpful, we talked about inside. I know, Zach, you mentioned inside out, Zach, and then Harris, you talked a little bit about it, but maybe let's take a step back. What do you mean, Zach, by inside out for those that may not be as familiar with that concept, just to set the foundation?
Yeah, I guess maybe I can go back into my my own personal history, like my sales jobs 15 years ago, and it was like data was, it was so much more a, the CRM was about, hey, does this account have a DUNS number? Because that will tell us like what bucket we put it in and how you operate and what you go march off into the universe and talk about, right? Like, oh, they're a, tax service provider, DUNS, SIC code, blah, blah, blah. Go talk about that. And I think like, again, that's a crude example, but I think it was like oftentimes like we go buy data, we stuff it into CRM based on what's available. We do our best job slicing up, and then again, I'll speak to like my background. You would go like, all right, what's the most sensible way to do this? Like, we kind of go by size of company, and then we have reps in SMB, mid-market, and enterprise, and it's kind of size of company roughly maps to kind of size of prize of the deal, and like go forth and prosper, And I think like, again, crude example, but now I think companies are being much more thoughtful of like, hey, maybe, higher education, very large organizations, lots of revenue, lots of employees, but like they don't spend the same way. They buy different ways. They're regulate, like I think companies have gotten and need to get much more sophisticated about like, all right, the customers who they're selling to, like, how do we deliver emotion that they're going to understand what we do, how we can help them specifically? And I think getting much more in the weeds of, hey, are you, where does your infrastructure sit? If you're a technology that's selling into a company's infrastructure, you go, hey, are you multi-cloud? Do you need stuff on-prem? Like all of these types of things that are more granular ways of just kind of understanding your customer and likely what they care about and where they're feeling pains, and not just going like, oh, you're oil and gas, you're regulated, you care about compliance, blah, blah, blah. Like, I guess that's what I mean. I don't know if this is too squishy or helpful, but I think all of that data that exists out in the universe is no doubt valuable, but the like inside out is going first, starting with like, what do we do that's like really unique? Why do our customers buy from us versus the next guy? And then what are the signals? What are the data points? What are the like, what are the the comorbidities with our motion, right? Like what are the things we can go look for that are really specific and interesting, and not the things that everybody's looking for? I think like we talked about last time, the like funding, hiring, promotion, job change, like all of those things are like, okay, those exist. Are they truly relevant to you? Is it always just like go take the signal that you can buy from somebody and just like bolt your value prop onto it? Or is it more like, can we go craft a signal that's actually really important to our business, then search for that, and then boom, when we mate that with our value prop, now we have a unique story.
I think the Vanta example is like a really interesting one, because that's like a different way of segmenting companies of like, do they or do they not have SOC 2, for example, on their site? And if they do, you might approach them differently. I think that like we had back when I ran the agency, we had a customer that provided a service that was like essentially like a surge service for contractors. And so, we had spent like quite a bit of time developing a campaign around like weather events, where contractors would have like an increase in doing like restoration services and things like that. There was one that for another previous client where they would, like, we targeted like the attendees at the user conference kind of thing, which was really effective. And like for some of these, you have to get really creative, but it's like yeah, and in this case, it's like a really small market, And so, but yeah, I think that it's like identifying a way to segment. If you think about like if you can apply a filter in Apollo or ZoomInfo, that's like level 1 thinking kind of thing. And I feel like level 2 is a data point that stitches between columns somehow within a traditional lead database. I'm not saying use or don't use ZoomInfo or Apollo. I'm just saying like, if they can easily categorize it, then it's like probably not sufficient for like where I think we're talking about things are going, which is like more advanced segmentation. It's like, yes, level 1, and too. So like, yes, okay, but you have to look at their website for this, but then you also have to look at their like org chart to see like, do they have this job title within their organization, and whatever. And it's like that's kind of where you start getting, I think, the insight where you can get this kind of like much better messaging. You can hit the relevance better than you could before, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting on our side because the comment that you guys made about outside in versus inside out, I think I've shared this before. We're about a $10 million business, and like we've got a lot of data, and and it's funny because if you guys are familiar with OKRs, which that's a whole nother debate if OKRs is the right structure, but that's like on a quarterly basis. Hey, what are the priorities for each department? And we've also been going through a whole messaging, and it was funny because our customer success team, which we call PX, like I was like they're charged with like coming out with the personas that we serve. And at the same time, I'm like communicating, no, the narrative we're taking to the market is this. This is the persona we serve. And then they're like, well, but we don't serve that persona. Like we may aspirationally serve that persona, but here's like the actual data shows. And I'd be curious to get y'all's. And the reason I bring that up is one, I think it's timely and it hits in a way that I think is very close to home. But I also wonder too, like how do you guys think about like what is like your current state versus aspirational? Like Zach, I know you guys are in a growth mode mindset, and like where you are today may be different from where you want to go and who you serve, etc. Like how do you balance that in your mind of, yep, this is the persona, like let's just use the data to inform how we target, but we also know, hey, we want to go at bigger companies, we want to go after bigger sales teams, or we want to, whatever that may be for you. I'd be curious to hear how you balance that.
Yeah, definitely living that as we speak. I think I think we try and be pretty thoughtful. I would say I give us some credit in like we're trying to push people to do something new. So you have to paint something aspirational. There has to be kind of some motivating vision. Hey, on the other side of this, the chasm, something better exists. But I don't think you can go too far out, and like I think we do speak to our customers a lot in the language of like, okay, like let me tell you what's on the truck today. Like let me tell you crawl, walk, run, right? Like here's what we can take off the truck and do today, and like here's where we can get to with the current product, and here's what we're building. I think like I've always found like, buyers are smart. They know they're investing in a relationship, and they want to know where you're headed, right? It takes a long time and it's painful. They don't want to make a switch. So I think some of the vision and aspiration really is important because people want that as well. The people that are going to buy what we're doing from all of us, they're trying to transform, they're trying to change. And so encouraging them that we're going to be on the journey together. Here's the path we're headed down. We're not there yet, but we're going to link up arms and go together. Like, I think that's good. You got to be a little careful. Don't make promises you can't keep, of course, but some blend of here's where we can get and here's where we start. If you give me money today, let me be, like I think there is also, and maybe this is more just like sales theory, but super transparent, set the bar low, give yourself a chance to over exceed expectations, I think is always a better move in my opinion. But yeah, we're definitely blending both, how do we help you with outbound today? How do we help you have a smarter brain for your ICP and this living definition in the future, right? Like people aren't buying that from me today, but they believe like, okay, as I start to adopt Octave, I get to start to have this living, breathing definition of who I care about, why they buy from me, what their pains are. And like, I think we're getting people to buy into that, but then that's not necessarily, what we go do tomorrow after they sign up,
Yeah, I like that. Like there's today and tomorrow kind of narrative in that.
Yeah.
And Harris, I may come to you with another question is,
Okay.
so I know, I mean, from what I understand, from your good, like everyone has different I say everyone, there are different types of go-to-market motions. And so I think for outbound sync, as an example, my perception is outbound sync is more of a sell through versus a sell to, meaning you're building partnerships that then drive end user relationships. As we think about like this topic of not just like the product roadmap, but also like the database, like does it change the sell to, like when you're doing a partnership motion versus a direct motion that you think is worth calling out for the audience, or is it, hey, a customer's a customer no matter how you're going to market?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that our go to market strategy is informed by our by by our cap table, and I think like that's true of a lot of companies. Like when a company started and it has like ownership, like what is the structure of the company, and that's going to, like, if you kind of work from the at some point, whether it's when I die and this is a 65-year project for me, or it's in 30 years or 10 years or 5 years or whatever, at some point I won't be running this company anymore. And so it's like, what are the expectations of the people who started it and who invested in it? And we did a pre-seed round with Tiny Seed, and we are bootstrapped. So like we don't have the cash to teach the market. And I think I really believe in what we're working on, but I don't know that it's like a venture scale $1 billion plus opportunity. Like Sam Altman talks about, like, if it couldn't be a $10 billion company, you're wasting your time if you're trying to raise venture kind of thing. And like we're not, like, I mean, we're solving a connection problem. And so as a result of that, like my focus is like, we need to just find the people who agree that this problem matters and who have a sense of urgency. Like we don't have the budget to like teach them about why it's important. And that's okay, right? Like, and so therefore what agencies do for us is that they are out there showing how to get incredible results. And of the companies who decide to bring on an expert to get those results, some percentage of them are, and I believe more over time, as this becomes more mainstream, will also have data governance requirements around their CRM and tracking and compliance and security. And then as that happens, we will be there to help those agencies serve that increasingly sophisticated customer of theirs. Whereas like 2 years ago, the people who are using, like, I mean, I've been a Smartlead customer for over 2 years. It's a very, very, very early customer of Clay. The people who were using Clay and Smartlead back 2 years ago were very different than they are today. It's like a lot of founder-led companies, a lot of tiny, it was just like experimenters and hackers and stuff. And so, for us, our go-to-market is like find the people who already kind of get it and just need to, and we just need to show them like, hey, here's how to do that thing that you've already spent some time thinking about, that you've already looked up on YouTube once or twice, or Googled, or you built with Make, or you've talked about it with ChatGPT. And so that's, for us, that's where agencies help. And that's kind of how we tend to think about it, because, and so for us, like, if you're familiar with that like meme of like the midwit that like sits in the middle, like the middle IQ, it's like very complicated ideas, and then there's like the low end and the high end of the IQ bell curve, and there's like the simple person has the same idea as a really smart person. I got caught in that like midwit part of the curve. Like I was building out these things that were complicated. And at the end of the day, like right now, what I'm doing with the campaigns that I'm shipping today that will go out in March are like, hey, you use Smartlead, you use HubSpot, we make them talk. Let me know if that's interesting to you at all. Like really simple. That's it. Like that's what we do. If you like that, if you think that's important, let's talk. If not, no worries. Have a good life. Like happy trails. And like that's really all that for us. That's all that matters right now. It doesn't matter like if they have 5 SDRs or 10 SDRs, or if they're in London or Sydney, or who do you use these two tools and do you want them to talk, right? Like that's the job. So for us, that's it. And like 95% of people might say no, and it's like, great, who cares? I'm just trying to find that handful who are right now. So that's kind of how my thinking on this has evolved over time. And but I'm not trying to, it's different. It's different in terms of expectations of the company and performance and what success looks like. We need to pay our bills right now, and we don't have extra money for like running bigger campaigns. So yeah, that I think that dictates a lot of the decisions that we make as a business, and maybe that'll change one day, but that's where we're at today.
Well, I think it's helpful to inform how you're going to market in terms of, hey, we have resource constraints, and therefore we need to build a partnership model that actually serves as our sales force to allow us to have efficiency. And to your point, we're not raising capital, so we don't have capital to burn. But it sounds like the same, hey guys, regardless of whether you're doing partner-led motion or direct motion, the data can be applied in the same manner. And kind of your point, simplify the message to figure out from a focus and clarity perspective, what are those hooks that's going to drive engagement. And so for you, like the Smartlead HubSpot example is a great one of All I need is 5% to say yes, and I'm in a good spot.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think for us, like our focus is on educating our partners. So it's like, how do we get them to understand our product and to get them to show their clients why this matters? And so that's why we've been focusing a lot on revenue attribution. Like Understory, Alex Find Understory, we talked about them earlier. Like he had a client where they found that they were driving like 2 to 3x, depending on the month, the pipeline that they were getting credit for. And it's because like they would come in, they would get a cold email and then they would forward it and they would end up coming in through a paid ad or through some other channel. And so it's like, that's like a really cool, tight, simple story that we can give our agencies, our partners to go out and tell the market, and they can tell their clients, hey, like we might be doing more for you than you think. Do you want us to track that? Okay, well, here's how. We need that data in HubSpot. So that like is a big focus for us. Is like, how do we equip our partners and so that they can go out and explain to their clients why this matters and gets them where they want to go. And so it is really different, like I'm not sending out lots of marketing emails. I'm not taking 10, 15 demo calls a day. It's definitely a different lever to pull.
Well, and I think that gets into the value element, and it goes back to what Zach was talking about around like with the partnership you have with your customers. There's today and there's tomorrow, and like we will continue to deliver in a way in which it achieves the outcome that you have as a business. Well, guys, I know we're at time. Any concluding thoughts? Zach, I'll let you start, and Harris, I'll let you finish.
Oh man, I don't know. Love the discussion today, and great meme pull, by the way. The midwit is like, I feel like I want that like on my wall to live by that. I always think of like the Apple Notes version of like the guy that's got the like notes with the Airtable, and it just like the ninjas is like, I use Apple Notes. So anyways, I just couldn't get that out of my head. Great pull.
We'll have that as the thumbnail for this episode.
That's right. That's right. You just I mean, I think of myself as it's like Schrodinger's meme. Like I'm constantly in all three parts of that bell curve. I feel like, depending on what the topic is. I think segmentation it's super important, and using it to try to get better results. And I think the only thing I'll just say on this is like, people think they can hire an entry-level person to figure this out, and like it's pretty freaking hard. And I think that you're going to have a bad time if you try to do that. I mean, you've got to have smart people in the room, whether that's an agency or it's software vendors or some combination of them and internal hires. Like this is like what makes companies work. It's not, the colors of your logo or whatever. And so I think that this is way harder than people realize. It's just really, it's just tough. And people hire an SDR and then they fire him 2 months later because they didn't book 10 meetings. And you're like, that definitely bothers me. I think when people underestimate how hard this stuff is, because the segmentation stuff is not easy. And then in hindsight, it's always obvious is the thing. You hear the story of Vanta's so big and they found this. Yeah, but like they walked through glass to get to that insight. And then only in hindsight, you're like, duh,
Yeah. It's not, you don't get to solve it once either. It's not right. Like it's never done, so I think people need to recognize that too.
Well, I think we also have there's a cost associated with doing it wrong. It's not just like you're throwing people at a problem and that there's that element, but there's the trust with the buyer that is like super important that we can't forget. It's like you can erode trust very, very fast. And once you are on the blacklist, it's very hard to change that. And we talked about even in the first episode, is that rise of the strategic tactician, that you can't just throw a body at it on the SDR side or on like an admin side. Someone really needs to understand what you're trying to achieve from a go-to-market perspective to operationalize that inside the CRM. And so yeah, if you have a disconnected system and you're just throwing bodies at it, you're in a world of hurt because it's going to introduce a lot of friction into the buyer process, but also with the internal teams, and nobody wins in that scenario. All right, guys. Well, appreciate your time.
Always.
Look forward to next week, and hopefully see you in Atlanta in May for Southbound.
Pencil in your calendars, folks.
See y'all.
See y'all.
Thanks, guys.